While we answer the first question, I'm going to ask people, direct you to the first poll, which you should be able to see on your screens. How confident are you the UK will get to 40 gigawatts of offshore wind by 2030? From very confident to very sceptical. So do you think we'll get to 40 gigawatts and maybe even go past it, or do you think we're not ready to scale up and or even get close to 30 gigawatt goal? What's your view? So so can I ask the panel, and Benj, as the chair of the sector deal, it's right to come to you first, of course. So what do we have to do differently to scale up to hit that 40 gigawatts?
So I guess it is a multi-dimensional challenge. How do we ramp up to 40? And you know, before diving into what gets us to 40, I think there's a really important framing point, which is, as Maurice said earlier, we are on the pathway to 75, 80, 90, maybe even 100 gigawatts. And what we mustn't do is, in our drive to get to that short term, and 2030 is a short term target, what we mustn't do is find quick fixes to get there, which make it harder to go the full journey. You know, this is the first lap of a long race. We've got to make sure that we put in the structures and the processes that unlock not just 40, but also 80 and potentially more. I think there's four areas I'd probably flag as the challenges. And by the way, I do think we could get there. So I'm hoping the poll will come out with everyone saying very confident that we can get to 40. It's not without its challenges though. And I think the first one is volume. We know there are enough projects around, both from round 3. We've got more volume coming through in round 4 and in ScotWind, which with a, pardon the pun, but with a following wind could potentially get in under the wire for 2030. But if we want to have healthy competition, we need more volume in the system. And I think the Crown Estate and Crown Estate Scotland are well aware of the fact that we've got to push ahead on that. And I know it comes up later, so I won't dive into that in any detail, but having the volume is key. Grid is an urgent issue, and I know Jonathan will have some comments on that. It's a challenge for anyone who's operating in the east of England with onshore cable routes, but also offshore. And from an environmental perspective, we know the North Sea in particular is a very busy place. Finding ways in which you can connect every single individual wind farm to its own connection point in the grid is not a sustainable solution. But by the way, it's worth mentioning that it's a nice problem to have. When the OFTO regime that we operate under was first envisaged, no one thought we would ever be talking about tens of gigawatts of offshore wind. So it made perfect sense when it was a bit of a niche technology 15 years ago. Clearly things have moved on, and the connection regime needs to move with it. I think the third area is around consenting. There are some big challenges around consenting. My company Orsted and others are waiting for consent decisions in the next few weeks. We're confident obviously about Hornsey 3, but there's a wider challenge. I think the seas are full of human and environmental activity that needs to be carefully managed, and I think we need to see a more strategic approach to how we deal with those issues, both to 2030 but crucially to get beyond. And I think that's one area where we mustn't solve the pathway to 2030 at the cost of the pathway to 2050. And then the final thing is just to reiterate what's been said before, the importance of collaboration. I think as we ramp up, that's only going to work if we see a concerted effort across government, and I mean government working in concert. One thing I've learned over the years is there's no such thing as government, just government departments. We need those departments, BAYS, DEFRA, MHCLG, other departments. We need them all to work together in a concerted way so that we can get to net zero with offshore wind providing the backbone of the power system.
Benj, thank you. And Mary, from an OEM perspective, can you ramp up? I mean, you know, this is more turbines to sell. Can you get there?
Always good opportunity to have more turbines to sell. I think I share, obviously on the OEM side rather than our developer customers, I share the confidence about the 40 gigawatts. I think the important question actually, and we talked a lot at the start about how offshore wind can drive economic growth, and the question is actually how you want to achieve that and from where. I think achieving that with low-cost suppliers globally, I think that's achievable. But of course, I don't think that's going to cut much ice with this current government importing plenty of components and plenty of expertise from overseas. So the question is actually how do we achieve it with the highest UK content that we can in the supply chain. I think the sector still set very extremely high ambitions, and it's good to be ambitious. We made a good start. There's a 250 million fund for innovation and competitiveness. The Offshore Wind Growth Partnership is up and running, issuing pilot calls, and the development of the clusters around the UK is moving at a really fast pace. But we're in a world where the global competition is increasing fast, with other markets getting on board. The big players are really coming into the market in the development community and in the supply chain as well. And in the UK, we've spent years thinking about whether we're going to invest in offshore wind, thinking about whether that's the right course. We've tried nuclear, tried other technologies, actually, whilst other particularly European markets have been moving at pace, developing their port infrastructure and also developing their onshore industries to move into offshore. So it's extremely challenging for the UK supply chain to operate on a level playing field. And I think whilst we've made a good start with the sector deal, I think probably what needs to come with that in the next few years is really for government to look at the industry strategically and invest in the right infrastructure, particularly ports, to really support UK businesses to compete, so we do achieve that 40 gigawatts with the highest UK content that we can.
Great, thank you, Mary. So let's look at the poll results. So the good news is just over half of people are confident that we're going to get close to 40 gigawatts, and about a third of people are skeptical. I think we're on track to hit the 30, but no more. So that's okay. There's much more, only 1% are very skeptical that we're not even going to get the 30. So that's good. Our industry, we've internalized that we're going to have to treble the amount of offshore wind in the next decade. That's a pretty good start. We'll see where we go to next. Okay. Any other comments from the rest of the panel before we move on? No.
Matt,
okay.
I think. Oh,
yes.
Sorry,
Christina.
Matt. I think I'd just say that challenge is good, isn't it? And the speakers have just have indicated it is all possible, and I think listening to them both, actually the takeaway message is we need to be driving towards this target together as an industry. So how do we bring the stakeholders, the regulators, the operators, industry all together to see this as a common target, and not forget about the target moving forward to 2050 as well, so that we can actually achieve this as where we need to be and how we get there. It's about realizing that ambition as one team almost, which I know I'm a bit of an idealist, and I guess I'm a consultant, so I'm used to bringing lots of teams together, but it just seems like if we could get everybody working towards a common purpose, everybody's all going to have all these different objective minds, this single target.
Christina, we're starting to lose you, so I'm gonna ask you to just pause there while your signal comes back. Morris, do you want to come in?
Actually, Muff's probably, I recognise we've got to move on to the next poll, so I'll come in at the next poll with some further thoughts. That's probably best.
All right, thanks, Morris. Christine, we'll come back to you in a moment.